Shane Nicholson has released 11 albums, won 3 ARIA awards and 16 golden guitars. So that is a promising start to his career. His most recent album is Living in Colour. He's also one of Australia's most in-demand producers. He is now embarking on a new tour, which will cover his 25 years in song. And we're going to talk about that. Hi, Shane.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm actually going to start not on the tour, but I'm going to start by saying that I imagine by this stage in your career, when other artists see your name as a finalist in a golden guitar category, it strikes fear into their heart because you swept the pool last year. You weren't even nominated as an artist this year and you managed to win one as a producer. So can you feel the fear from everyone else?
Well, I feel the fear myself. There's plenty of other big hitters at the golden guitars that I've lost to many times. So I know the fear well myself. It's a nice experience when everybody gets a bit of a crack at the podium, you know, however many years it takes. It's nice that when everybody gets a shot at it. And I was lucky that last year was one of my shots. It was a really nice one. It meant a lot, specifically because it was that record. But I mean, it always means a lot. But yeah, it was a very nice bonus to the whole project.
And Lynn Botel's Wiser, which won this year, and you produced that, was a wonderful record as well. And you sang with Lynn on that. And she tells a story on stage where she wanted you to sing on that song, but she didn't know how to ask you. And then she finally got around to asking you, and it turned out you'd had a similar thought about singing on it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I try and get myself on as many albums as possible when I'm producing. I can kind of wedge my way into most projects, yeah.
Well, I suppose also that means you've got the pick of the songs because you know exactly what's going on the album and you can say, that's the one I want.
Yeah, look, she probably didn't tell you the whole story about that. It was actually, we asked a few other people to do that first, like males as a guest vocal, but none of them worked out schedule wise, and it was just really hard to organize. And I was sort of like the backstop. I was just like, okay, well, maybe I better do it. No, we couldn't find someone else.
Yeah. Well, you're a pretty qualified backstop. When that album on golden guitar, then you were the producer, does it feel a bit different, almost parental, I guess, when you win as a producer?
Absolutely. I've won a few times as producer, and I think they've all been with Lynn, actually, right, from memory. And it always feels amazing because it's a very different feeling than winning for your own record. I mean, I put as much blood and passion into anyone else's album as I do, as much as I do on my own. I live and breathe albums when I make them, no matter who it's for. So it's still hugely rewarding to win on behalf of someone else's record. But it's a different kind of feeling because you're also feeling quite proud that you helped someone else achieve or realize that goal that they had. And it's nice to be a part of that, I guess, or play a role in somebody else's victory or achievement, you know? Yeah.
Now, do you have a display cabinet for all these awards, or are they in the pool room?
I do. Well, I do actually. They're all outside the studio, on a bench thing there. I used to have them all in a cupboard because I always felt a little self-conscious, like it was a bit, sort of, I don't know, bragging or something when people would come around. And then I realized over time that, you know what, I really worked hard for those things, and I want to see them when I go to work. So it makes me work hard. So I've put them they're just outside the door of the studio. So every day when I come to work, I walk past them, and it makes me think, okay, pick your game up, do a good day, make sure you're making good music, and it's not so much to win more awards, but, just don't want to lose anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's also not just working hard, but working consistently, and one could say actually getting better each time, because I think the challenge for an artist like you and the tour is going to reflect your body of work. You've made a lot of albums, you've written a lot of songs. It would be, I think, the easier path is actually to go off the boil a bit. It's a lot harder to keep trying to at least equal what you've done before, if not best it.
I think if I stopped, if I lost that desire to do that, I wouldn't do it anymore. I think to do I think in my mind, to be the kind of artist I want to be, it takes all of me when I'm in that mode, when I'm writing or when I'm recording or performing. It takes all of me, and if I didn't have all of me to give, I don't think I would do it. I think I would do something else that I could put all of me into. It's just the kind of the way I seem to get satisfaction out of doing things, is by doing it wholeheartedly and putting my whole being into it, and to the detriment of everything else in my life at times. My poor family outside the studio. I can hear my baby Jude out there kind of crying because it's nearly dinner time, and so I just, and I'm in here in the studio, fixing somebody's vocal take from today. It's just kind of, it's what I do, and it does take all of me, but I love that it kind of I don't know, it's become part of me over all these years, and I feel like I would be somewhat less of a complete human if I wasn't doing it.
No, so putting all of you into it includes going on this tour, which is reflecting your 25 years in song, as the description has been. I don't even know, though, how you would begin to put together a set list for this show, even though it's 2 sets from what I understand. So that gives you a fair amount of scope. But how have you started to choose the songs?
It's been quite difficult, but I don't remember them all. So I have to kind of open up, Spotify or something and look at all of the albums and then kind of go through everything. And some of them I haven't played for over 20 years, like especially the early records. I haven't revisited them very much since then. So it's a matter of not just picking the songs, but relearning a lot of them completely. And some of them feel like they're songs that were written by somebody else because it's like a lifetime ago, but it's also really cool. And because I'm doing this show, like you said, it's a long show. There's no support act. It's me kind of playing a couple of sets a night, and I'm trying to attach the stories to the songs that have existed all that time. So I've never kept diaries or journals in my life because I just lack the discipline. But I think songs have become my journals, and records become my diaries. And so I'm trying to, what I'm doing while picking the set list is go back and remembering all of the stories that came along with those songs, some of them, where they came from or where I wrote them or why I wrote them. And then in an attempt to kind of loosely piece together that whole period of, a dozen albums over 25 years. And there's a lot of living and a lot of music that's gone on in that time. So it's just a matter of trying to pull together the songs that tell the story and the stories that accompany those songs to come up with a complete sort of package of what that whole period has been for me, and I didn't even know that it was 25 years. It was my manager that said to me, do you realize you've kind of tipped over past your 25 year since your first release kind of thing? And I didn't even really realize. I still think of myself as a 25-year-old. So to have been doing it for 25 years was a bit of a shock, but I thought it was a milestone that should somehow be acknowledged, at least for me to kind of acknowledge it and go on the road and close it all off as a chapter and or as book one, in the series.
Yeah. I suppose also going back to earlier material creatively, that would be really interesting because, as you said, you're not the person you were when you wrote those songs. So you're not the person you were when you sang those songs on a recording. And I would imagine it's quite interesting to look at those lyrics, to hear those melodies and think, how am I going to interpret this now?
True. But it's also really interesting because playing songs that I wrote, when I was in my early 20s, now after having played for 20 odd years since then, I can put this whole new kind of slant of experience on them that some of them were quite naive, and I can hear my naivety and my age, and my lack of life experience in some of them, and coming at them now from a different angle. And certainly musically as well, I can reinvent them in ways that I never imagined back then because I hadn't, played all of the music and had all of the musical experiences I've now had. So it's actually really interesting trying to reinvent them. And the biggest challenge is I can't sing that high anymore. So I've got to bring all the songs down, because, that's a long time ago. I could sing a lot higher then.
Now, when I saw you play last year on on one of the delayed Living in Colour dates, Matt Fell was with you, and he'd also produced that album, which was not, I would imagine, great, because your producers there working with you on stage. No Matt Fell this time, by the sound of it.
No Matt Fell, but I'm endeavouring to do on this whole tour is that, because it's been such a long time recording and travelling, especially in Australia, I've used a lot of musicians. I have really close musician friends that have worked with me over the years in almost every port in the country. So I'm trying to get them out of their homes, even though it's winter, and get them to be guests at all of these shows as I travel around, because they're part of that story, that 25-year story. And I'm playing songs every night that include them. So wherever I go, I'm going to try and pull along people from around that area that I've played with, worked with before, or have some kind of involvement in that story, and include them, because they are all part of it. And that way, every show will be sort of individual. There'll be no two shows that are the same, and there'll be no two shows that even have the same set list. It's going to be a revolving kind of, or evolving kind of show, I think. But it was certainly not the kind of show I could drag a band around on, because there's so many songs to play every night. There's so many stories to tell. There's so much ground to cover, and it'll be changing all the night. I think every night, I think the band would just hate me by the end of having throwing so much material at them. It's like over 100 songs that they'd have to learn just in case I chose to play one of them. So, yeah.
Now, is it too late to put in requests? Because, I'm familiar.
Well, it's never too late. It's never too late to put in your request.
Okay, so my request would be Keep It Together, Long Time Coming, and Hermansburg.
Oh, lovely. Well, they've all made it to the shortlist at this stage, those three. So they're looking good. They're looking good.
Well, I'm pleased my taste aligns with yours, but I also know from previous experience that you do give audiences sometimes the opportunity on the night to make requests. Will you be doing that again?
I often do, yeah. Song bingo we play, and I often do give the audience a chance to call out songs. It's only really because sometimes there's songs that I just don't remember to play, and I try to write set lists before shows. I rarely stick to them. They're just kind of, it's sort of make it up as you go along kind of thing. And there's staples that happen in every show, but this one's quite different. I've got to cover a lot of ground. So there's definitely set lists and a pool of leftover songs that I'll be drawing from. But yeah, I always love a bit of song bingo, because I like that people try and trip me up. They call out for songs that they think I wouldn't remember, and usually they're right. I don't remember them, and it's a train wreck, but it's all part of the fun.
And of course, you also put out Sleeping Dogs, which was a compilation of B-sides and things. So I would imagine if they're trying to trip you up, that may be the one. There's
been a few call outs for things from that, yes, and they've been absolute nightmares to try and get through. But just because some of those songs I played once to record them, and I've never heard them again. So it's a real challenge. But I love the challenge, and it's a good way for me to see what just to get an insight into what audiences are really listening to, and what records they have, and what songs they like, what connects, and it makes it a two-way conversation. I like these shows. It's different when you have a band and it's loud and there's smoke and it's a show, but I like these kind of intimate performances to be a two-way conversation. It's not just a performance. It's sort of like having everyone in a large lounge room, and I like making them part of the show, So, and I sometimes get people up to play things, instruments, and I generally always ask for somebody who's never played an instrument before. They're the ones I want to come up and try and play something with me, and it's always fun. But it just breaks down that barrier between artist and audience, I think, and that's what makes those intimate shows special, and it makes them a one-off. It makes them a show that's never going to happen anywhere else ever again.
Yeah. Have you always been like that as an artist in terms of wanting to interact with the audience, or is it something that's developed as you've realized that audience is there, that people have this relationship with your music?
Yeah, I never was like that. I was quite the opposite. I was incredibly shy on stage, would hardly ever speak between songs, would finish my last song and I'd be off stage, gone before the applause finished. Like I just was not that kind of, I didn't understand how to be that kind of engaged or engaging artist. I think I was, it wasn't until many, many years later, lots and lots of touring, especially touring a lot with Casey, doing the records that we did together, because there was so much onstage banter with that because of our situation and our, being married, and there was so much fodder there for us to talk about, and that really kind of got me talking a lot more on stage and developing that kind of side of performance, I think. And it's certainly become a massive part of my show now. And interestingly, the people that I admire are all, the artists that I admire are ones that are brilliant at that. People like I saw Steve Poltz recently, and he's a master at that. Like his stage banter is as important as the music he plays. Freddie Eaglesmith, all these great artists whose interactions with the audience are just as big a part of their act as their music is. And I think it's just a great way to connect people with you as a person and as an artist, and not just somebody singing a song, and puts a human to the song. Yeah.
I think an extreme version of that banter I saw was you and Casey playing at a venue in Katoomba a few years ago, and the aircon was such that the guitars kept going out of tune, and you spent an inordinate amount of time between each song having to tune each guitar, and then of course she had to fill in with banter, you had to fill in with banter. I remember thinking, they're great at the banter, but this must be extremely frustrating.
Well, yeah, that happens a lot. It was probably a banjo, I'm guessing. It was probably a banjo that was constantly out of tune, because they're out of tune in the best of circumstances, let alone when the aircon's not working. But yeah, that the banter was always fun, but it was always genuine too. It was pretty much just the way we interacted off stage. So it's that kind of taught me just to, that all those years of touring together, and we did it here and in the US. It just kind of really, I don't know, helped me feel more comfortable just being myself on stage and letting that out, rather than having the artistic facade, put up, when you go on stage. And yeah, I've really taken to it, and I really enjoy that now. And it's added a whole new element to the show. I actually like going out and selling merchandise and signing autographs after the show, whereas I never even did that. I never even went out the front to sign autographs after a show, because I would have to talk to people, and that would freak me out, and I would get anxious, and I just wanted to go back to the hotel. But now I kind of enjoy that interaction, because I'm getting a different sort of feedback. It's not just applause or whatever the adoration is at the show. It's like a personal feedback about songs, and people telling you about their experiences with your music or whatever. And yeah, there's a whole other extra level of satisfaction that comes from that. So, I enjoy that now as well. It's a very different scenario, me touring now, than it used to be. It's really, really different, and really, I think, enjoyable. Like, I'm enjoying it again. I really went through a stage of being over touring. I just had been doing it for so long, and the same way for so long, that it was getting monotonous and tedious. So all it's 90 minutes on stage, which was always brilliant, but the rest of it was just taking a toll. But I'm finding this whole renewed love for it, specifically since the Living in Colour tour that I did. The first main tour for the album was just so fun, and I'm guessing it was also because that was the first tour post-COVID, and I hadn't been touring for a long time for Abermain, and I'm guessing that's because it was their first shows after COVID, and they hadn't shot. So it was, all the stars aligned, and that tour was fantastic. And that's largely why this tour I'm doing now is pretty much the exact same run of the Living in Colour tour, hence Living in More Colour. It's the same venues, the same. I'm going everywhere that I did in the whatever. So I'm doing the whole thing again, and I'm expecting it to be just as much fun.
Yeah. Well, and one of the venues you're going to is the Press in Tamworth, which is during the Hats Off to Country tour. And I'm guessing because you would have played earlier this year, you are in fact double dipping in Tamworth this year, summer and winter.
Right. Well, I've never been to Tamworth outside of the summer festival. I've never been to Hats Off, the January festival. So this is the first time. So, and and the Press, I love the Press. It's a perfect venue that I'm doing, and there's a few friends in playing that same weekend, so I get to kind of catch up with a few folks and make a weekend of it. It's gonna, I'm really, don't tell my partner Emma, but there's also an element of this tour that is like a bit of a holiday, because not only am I in the studio a lot, but we're not getting much sleep with a 9-month-old baby. So going on tour is actually, I'm looking forward to a full night's sleep and not being woken up all night and then, up at 5 a.m. or something. And so I'm actually looking forward to it being a bit of a holiday. Not that she needs to know that. But
No, this is definitely not going to be anywhere she can see it. Now, I'm actually going to enter the
absolutely.
we're going to enter the flattery portion of the interview, because I actually want to talk about your singing, because you are so widely acknowledged by those awards by your peers as a great songwriter, and that's often talked about you as a songwriter, but you're actually a great singer as well. And so when I sort of, if I think about listening to your music, it's like you just got such a great voice. You talked about maybe not singing the high notes as you used to, but I've never asked you when I've interviewed you before about how you started as a singer, like what age, what your influences were, and whether you actually were influenced by anyone as a singer, or whether you developed your own sound.
Funnily enough, I never wanted to be a singer, and I think that's because, like I said, I was sort of shy in a way, I guess, with that when I was younger. I was happy to stand on stage and play behind a guitar, but singing was something I wasn't really all that into, until I was sort of forced into it when our singer left from our band. So my band that became Pretty Violet Stain for 10 years. When we first left high school, we ended up scoring this big showcase for a couple of major record labels. But a week before the showcases happened, for some reason we thought it was a wise time to sack our singer, and we had no time to get someone else. So I sang by default just for those shows, so that we could play these showcases and hopefully get a record deal. But of course, what happened was we did get a record deal, and then I was stuck singing because that was kind of the band that was presented, so we couldn't change it then. So I was reluctantly a lead singer from that point on, and so I had no designs on being a singer, but it was something that I just kind of, I guess, fell into out of necessity. But I love it now. Like I've grown into it, I guess. I've grown into being a singer, and there's lots of singers that inspire me, but strangely, a lot of my favorite singers and artists, I don't really have favorite singers who are just singers. It's artists, it's writers, but they're all people like, Bob Dylan and Neil Young, people who aren't really known for being, the best singer in the world. It's more an entire package. They have their songs, the way their voice tells those stories, and they're the kind of singers that I really aspire to. But there's people I love listening to. Always I can admire great singers. I'm lucky being a producer. I get to record a whole bunch of great singers. Like we talked about Lynn before. She's like one of the best singers in the country. Being able to record her is not work at all. It's actually a whole lot of fun. So yeah, I love singing. I love more so that it's a way to tell a story, really, that it's a vehicle to carry a lyric of a song, something I want to convey. So singing is sort of a byproduct of just wanting to be creative and make songs, I think, so I haven't really thought about it too much. It's just something I do, and it's certainly not something I've ever felt hugely confident about. It's just something I do, and but I do it just because I have to. I think.
Well, it's working.
Thank you. Thanks.
Another aspect of your work, I would think partly this is through being a producer that you essentially would mentor some artists, but I'm thinking actually of a more direct mentoring role with someone like Leon Milner, where you write a song together. That song actually goes on to win a Golden Guitar. That he was very much an emerging songwriter. I'm wondering if there were any artists who actually acted like a mentor for you or mentors for you as you were emerging as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. There was quite a few. There was people I worked with back that I met when I was about 19 or so. I went to my first writers' camp, which was at Michael Gudinski's house up in the mountains of Mount Macedon in Melbourne. And that was when I first met and wrote with people like David Bridie and Deborah Conway and all these people that I'd seen on TV, and then I got to meet and write songs. David Bridie was one in particular that I worked with there, wrote a song with, very nervously wrote a song with him. I was a big fan of his, and then we stayed in touch and did work together over the years, and he became a mentor of sorts. There was quite a few people over different periods, in different ways. Like Jimmy Barnes was a really big mentor to me in that we were on tour with him a lot, but he would make an effort to get me out on stage and, get me to sing with him. And it was like some of the most incredible moments I've had, singing on stage with somebody like him. You just learn a lot. So things like that. Diesel's done that with me, had me up doing shows, and early on, before I really kind of had a flag to bear back then. And, those kinds of things mean a lot. And even as small as they might be, they can have lasting impacts on you, But my biggest musical mentor was probably my high school friend who taught me how to play guitar. That was it. He was 2 years above me in high school. He charged me $8 every Saturday to go to his house and give me an hour's guitar lesson. And that's pretty much how I learned to play. But then I joined his band as a guitar player. And I worked with him for years and years, and he taught me to actually play guitar. And so he probably had one of the biggest impacts on me ever. And it was just, when I think back to it, I think of him as like this older, wiser, sage-like guy, but he was only 16, and I was 14, when we started, and he taught me for about 4 years, and then and we still keep in touch. He's an incredible guitar player, incredible. So it's I remember that. I'll never forget that. My high school Saturdays, and I used to have to clean my parents' bathroom every Saturday morning to get the $8 that I could take to pay him for the lesson. Yeah.
Well, I think that is a perfect moment actually on which to end, because that is the start of your career you've just described, and the tour is going to give us 25 years overview of a career since then. You are touring throughout July and August. The dates will be attached to this interview. Shane Nicholson, as ever, a great pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to talk to you too. Thanks for having me.